Well, hello and welcome back. My name is Kieron Seamons. This is my inky world, and we talk about and demonstrate a lot of art tips and tricks through the day. So today's question is all about the pre-drawing before the inking. Now there's a big debate about this, the fors and against, and I thought we'd talk about it because I've had so many questions about what are the benefits of and what are the disadvantages of. And it's kind of 50-50. So let's get into the problems and the the good bits of the pre-drawing. Okay, let's get into it. This way. Okay, to pre-sketch or not to pre-sketch. Now, there are different situations for your artwork and certain needs that you have. For example, if I was to be drawing a comic book or a comic strip, something that is very planned and organized, I would definitely need a pre-sketch to make it work. I would need to be able to plan it out. I would need to have some kind of construction of what I'm doing. And that really needs you to plan things very carefully. So anything on the side of like organization, a planned sketch works beautifully. It really helps you to know what you're doing. But I found that what it also does is that it does kind of turn the brain off. When you have something that is planned, when you're inking, you don't really need to think anything outside of only inking. So you do kind of get to a situation of kind of automatic. Whereas when you're doing an illustration, if it's a one-off illustration, I would definitely go without a pre-sketch. The pre-sketch gives you a lot of freedom, and that freedom gives you creativity. It gives you a lot more imagination, and it gives you that little extra burst of passion into your design. And I do find that with my type of drawing, without that kind of freedom, I wouldn't really have that final result. I would think about things. For example, if I was to draw something simple, some simple design to for example, like a duck. If I was to draw a duck, okay, somebody wants me to draw them a duck. If I'm to draw a duck, I would start to plan it. I would start to organize my thoughts. What shape is a duck? For example, I would start to draw a nice kind of round head. I would think of it in a kind of pear shape, where it's very small at the top and coming very down into a more kind of teardrop type shaped body. And that gives me a duck plan. You know, it gives me, you know, I could circle it down. I could do a nice beak. And if it's a very simple drawing, then it's kind of building a plan for me. The legs, I could do the legs with a nice triangle feet, another leg with a nice triangle feet. And once I've kind of planned it down, put the wing on, let's put a wing. Once I've planned it, I'm kind of restricted in a way. And because I'm restricted, I'm also lacking that that creative flair. Okay. For example, if I was to, I'll use one of those, just a brush pen. If I was to draw that down, I would be quite happy to do a very nice line around what I've already pre-planned. And, you know, whatever, eyes, okay, eyes, okay. And it kind of gives me this, you know, I don't really have to think too much about anything except how that line looks, and I'm concentrating only on the line. Make it nice, a nice kind of thick and thin. So it's kind of like two parts of the drawing, about planning it out. If I was doing a comic, for example, I would need to plan out each panel to be able for it to work and for it to flow. Whereas with illustration, you have whatever your approach is. If you want to have a wild, crazy drawing, or you want to have something a little bit more constructed and, I don't know, beautiful, organized. It's an organized drawing, so I know exactly where I'm putting my pen, so I can kind of relax down to a final drawing. But when I'm coming down to something that is just a blank piece of paper, I have to then rely on my kind of memory of a duck. And that gives me a lot of freedom. It gives me a lot of freedom because I can now draw my duck in a crazy fashion if I want. And because there's no I can change my mind. I can get halfway through it and decide I want his wings up like this, like he's flying, or I want them tucked up. And I can only really balance that and guide that as I'm going through the drawing. And as I'm going through the drawing, it's kind of like driving a car. I'm kind of steering it to what's in front of me. And as I'm drawing it, certain things will direct me into a different direction. So I'm going to draw a kind of a crazy duck, and I'm going to make it up as I go along. I'm going to decide what to do with the wings, and to do with the feet, and to do with the body, and to do with the head. And I can just decide when I come to that part. I can draw the head, then I can draw the neck, and then I can draw the body, then I can draw the arms. So I can kind of guide the drawing. You know, if I draw too much the head and too much the neck, I could make the body smaller, I could make the body bigger, do you see what I mean? So I will draw a duck. Let's choose a different nib. Okay, quite a big chunky nib. There you go. It's like kind of like a spear. Okay, so you can see that I'm using a different nib to what I was using 10 minutes ago. And we're going to kind of get into some kind of creative thoughts. What type of duck do we want? Do we want a nice calm duck like we drew a minute ago? Or do we want something a little bit more crazy and expressive? And we can just play with those ideas. So let's get in and let's draw a duck's head. Let's start with the head. And as we're doing this, try to see that we have no plan on the paper. So if we change our mind and we feel like we've drawn the head too big or too small, we can change direction. So let's get in and draw a duck. Shall we give him some hair? Why not? Let's give him some hair. Now, what makes me very happy when I'm drawing is the fact that I do have that freedom. I do have that freedom to draw whatever comes into my mind, you know, as my two brains are pulling me in the direction of keeping it calm, going wild. I've kind of got this pull. And what it gives me is it gives me this luxury of building the character as I feel fit. So if I draw a nice kind of smiling beak, like that. Give him some little nostrils, kind of give him that kind of duck feeling. And I'm not sure about the eyes at the moment. What kind of eyes do I want? Okay, I've waited too long. I've dropped a blob of ink. So what can I do with that blob of ink? Well, let's just make it into an eyebrow. And it kind of gives me that expression already. It's kind of like, sometimes I feel like the drop of ink is directing me to go that way. It's like it's already pre-planned. So follow what your ink is telling you. You know, it's giving me quite a cool kind of character. Ooh. So I've kind of got this nice kind of feeling from a very quite a confident looking duck, you know. And again, this is giving me an expression that I didn't really plan. I didn't really think about. And it's really nice to be able to feel a gift of expression, a gift of dropping that ink, and that has directed me to be a confident kind of duck. Now I'm going to possibly give him a and it's really already starting to paint a picture of a character. So now we're going on to the next stage of the neck. What kind of a neck would a character like that have? Now, before we didn't really know what the expression was, so it kind of leads us to this lovely direction of, well, maybe he's got quite a bent neck. You know, maybe he's had some kind of accident, you know, maybe he's kind of like a little bit of a bent and buckled type of duck or goose. Maybe a goose because of how long that neck is going to be. And again, I've kind of drawn the head on one side of the paper. So I've now used the neck to fill the other side. So again, it's kind of building that freedom. And by building that kind of freedom makes me feel like I'm starting to work with the paper. And I can control how I want, you know, where do I want the body? Do I want the body to come along like this? Do I want the body to be over here? Do I want to build the neck more? So there's lots of decisions for us to have. I'm going to kind of give him a nice kind of join to the body, a nice kind of furry or feathery kind of join. And let's get in. We can do a brush again just to change things up. And again, that's starting to get to the point where it's changing the dynamics of the drawing. So because I've done that, I need to fill this gap down here because the body is leaning that way. So I'm going to draw the wings down here. Now, again, by not having this kind of pre-drawing, it's meant that I can be a lot more kind of flexible about my pose. And a pose is something that can be very restricting. Once you've drawn a pose, you're kind of stuck with it. So I think once you kind of constructed it and thought about it and thought about it and then put the ink on top, again, kind of tightening everything up. Whereas now I've kind of got this freedom here to build in another wing. Do I bring another wing in here? Yes, bringing it in past where the mouth is. And again, it's kind of given me that freedom of the pose. And for me, in a lot of times when I've looked back at drawings, I've really thought that if I hadn't have had that freedom, I wouldn't have come up with something so distorted. And sometimes the distortion is the attraction, you know? Sometimes you got a kind of bent and twisted pose. Sometimes it's very beautiful to look at. And that also comes down to the thickness of line, you know? Once I'm kind of putting in a very kind of thick blob of ink, again, it adds, in my mind, it adds beauty. It adds a lot of beauty to the overall image. So, as you can see here, you can kind of go through and construct the line, make the line more appealing by adding thicknesses. For example, there, it looks very weak at the top of the neck. And if I was to thicken that part up, I would find that it automatically seems to balance the line across the drawing, and it adds a lot to it. So here, I've kind of come to a dilemma. And I would never have come to this dilemma if I had planned the drawing. If I had kind of got to a stage where I was thinking about every stage of this drawing, I would never have come to this point. And this point, for me, is where I could draw the legs straight down. I could draw the legs wide open, like he's jumping in the air. And I love the idea of bringing those feet down. And what it does is it gives me this very bent and distorted type of pose. It gives me this feeling that he's kind of like standing on his legs and his body's bending that way and his neck's going up to balance it over with his head, which is just above his feet, which gives him that lovely sense of balance, even though he's all twisted and buckled. It gives him that beautiful sense of balance. And balance is one of the beautiful things about a drawing. If you have balance in your drawing, everything works. So there you have a very twisted, a very bent, a very buckled goose. And although it probably is a little bit overly buckled, when you compare it to something like that, I know which one I prefer. Although this is more duck-like, more goose-like, and it's more constructed and more controlled, I'm finding that I'm having more fun letting my mind loose, letting everything just happen in a natural way of drawing. And I really do find that it's more beautiful. For me, it's more beautiful. The whole kind of construction of it is much more beautiful. And there's also an element of confidence, you know? There's an element of confidence there that kind of frees up your mind, frees up what you're actually doing with your drawing. If you're not so worried about what's happening, if you're not so worried about whether it looks like a duck, looks like a goose, whatever, it has that kind of element of freedom. Now, you can, at this stage, you can kind of look back at your drawing and you can start to find out anything that your eye points to. Your eye goes, that bit. And there's something about his bald head that's bugging me. And I thought, well, maybe I can add a little bit more kind of hair to him. And that adds to this kind of character of him having a kind of triangle almost. There's hair at the sides, there's hair at the top, and it's like, it helps with that kind of triangle type of appearance to him. And that helps balance. And this is also part of it, is looking at your drawing and trying to balance where the line is too thick, whether you could add another thickness somewhere else to balance it off. And there we have a very kind of twisted, a very rather beautiful goose. And I rather like him. You can put a few little clouds in behind to show that he's out in a beautiful day. Put my name on somewhere. And always sign your drawings, always. Especially if you're doing it for somebody. If you're doing a drawing for somebody, make sure you put your name on it. There's nothing more frustrating when you're looking around on the internet and you're seeing drawings, or you're seeing it in a book and you're seeing a beautiful piece of artwork, or one in a very bizarre, strange, unique style, and you have no idea who did it. Always an element of sadness in it, that I can't look at that drawing and think, wow, that's a bizarre piece. Who did it? I want to see more, you know, and you have no name to go with. So do sign, because whatever you think of your artwork, whatever your overall kind of feeling about your own artwork, somebody might fall in love with it. Somebody might be absolutely crazy in love with your artwork. And that sometimes is all you need. Sometimes you just need one person that is so in love with your work. I'm still looking for that one person. But I have a lot of people that will come back often, very, very often. I mean, there's more than 30,000 people watching every month. And that is telling me that those people are coming back for something. They're coming back to see what madness we are drawing today. What is going to be today's surprise. And that's what it is. It really is a surprise. It's a surprise to me. It's a surprise to you. And that's what makes me keep coming back. If I'm to draw every day like this, that it's going to surprise me. as much as it's going to surprise you. And that gives me this great pleasure. Now, maybe I will draw this and I will think, oh, I'm not so happy with that. And I'll put it on the side. But tomorrow when I'm walking past, I'll be walking past, going to make a nice cup of tea. And I'll walk past and I'll just, oh, wow, that's what I did the other day. And I will look at it and I'll analyze it. And I'll have this rush of passion, this rush of love for what I did a couple of days ago. And maybe I didn't like it a couple of days ago, but you're seeing it from a fresh pair of eyes. And a fresh pair of eyes is sometimes makes a drawing that you don't like, painting that you don't like, into something that connects. And it's that connection that artists have a lot of. We have that connection on a piece, on a drawing, on a video, on a sketch, an illustration, whatever. Just go through your sketchbook and you will see things that you think, oh, I didn't feel as beautiful when I drew it, but now going through it, you start to find little gems of your own work, and that is such a beautiful thing. So that is a little lesson on the pre-sketch. If you're doing something that needs to be organized, pre-sketch might save the day. It might give you that confidence to ink it and have something that you need at the end of the day. But if you're trying to do an illustration that with a character, pre-planning sometimes will stiffen up that character. If you're coming up with character designs, I would sketch up some shapes first. Go with that kind of free flowing, and you might come up with something so beautiful at the end. Try it. So there is today's crazy bent up goose, and that might go in today's or this week's auction. I will paint it up and put it in there for somebody to have that as an inspiration. I hope you have learned something from today, and if you've enjoyed this video in any way, come and join us. We're here every day. We draw different every day. We approach everything different every day. And it's always, well, I don't know if I can say always, but for me, I love this process. And if you can watch a few videos and you get something back, if you get some inspiration, if you get some little bubbles of excitement to go and draw a picture, then I have done my job. If one of my drawings has made you smile, if the approach has made you smile, I have done my job. So go and draw, have a beautiful day, and I'll see you back here tomorrow for some more drawing. See you soon. Bye-bye.